Hi, I'm Scott. Welcome to Synth Stuff, and this is my new digital audio workstation computer. Coming up. I have used the same computer for my DAW Cubase for 10 years. If you can believe it, I have not changed computers in 10 years simply because every time I change computers, it takes about a week to get all my software and configurations and everything transferred across and working correctly. And that makes me put it off because I don't have a week to kill on transferring all that stuff. That said, I've known for a while that my computer needs to be upgraded. Well, it has been upgraded because even though the processor is 10 years old, I've added to it over time. I've put a faster graphics card in it for video editing. I've put fast SSD drives. I've put bigger hard drives. So it's come along over the years, but the heart of it, the processor, is still limited because it's a 10-year-old technology processor. And that becomes evident when I'm doing things like editing video or editing audio or recording audio, particularly if I'm actually doing playback while I'm recording and some of that playback has effects on those channels. I'm starting to get dropouts and I can't depend on recordings to record successfully anymore. More than once I've been recording something where I'll record a track while the other tracks are playing back and I hear a glitch and I look over and I see that there's been a buffer overrun or audio CPU spike and it caused the recording to stop. Or worse, I'll be playing something and recording it and look over and realize, oh, it stopped recording 2 minutes ago, and that causes bad language. So the solution to that is to bite the bullet and upgrade to a new computer. Now, I don't buy pre-made computers. I always make my own computers out of parts, and the reason for that is because I want my computer to have exactly the parts I want, the best parts that I can buy at the price that I want to pay, without some company saying, well, here's the parts that we're going to put together that we think you will want and that will generate us the most profit. So I have done a bunch of research and decided on the best cost-benefit factor for each of these items, and I'm going to show you how I put them together, and hopefully they'll have a working computer at the end. So the heart of it is an AMD Ryzen 7950X processor. This is a relatively new processor, 16 core, 32 thread, very, very fast. Originally, I was thinking maybe I would do the Threadripper that has the crazy 64 cores and all that kind of stuff, but those things are many, many thousands of dollars, and I honestly don't need that. It would be nice, but I don't need it. This will more than suit my purposes for many years to come. And of course, that processor needs to plug into a motherboard, which is, I've got the Asus Prime X670 Prime or Pro Wi-Fi, whatever this thing is. Anyway, it gets good reviews. It has Wi-Fi that I don't care about. I use strictly wired networking, but it does have the ability to take this processor, lots of memory, PCI 5, all the good stuff that you would expect a high-end board for an AM5, which is what this processor is, to work with. So that is the main board that we'll be using. For memory, I have 64 gigabytes of DDR5. It says 6,000 megahertz. Actually, it's 6,000 mega transfers. I don't know why they put megahertz on here. It's technical, but anyway, megahertz is wrong for memory. It's mega transfers. I have some Corsair Vengeance DDR5 6000. Should be pretty good. I have 32 gigabytes on my current computer. The new one will have 64. I can double that to 128 if I ever need it. I probably won't, but the option is there. For storage, I have a 4 terabyte M2 PCI hard drive. This is going to be the main system drive. It's a Samsung. I have been using SSD drives pretty much since they've come out, and I have always used Samsung. The only exception to that is a laptop that I got for work once that had some other drive. I think it was a Corsair or something in it, and that drive failed. I have never ever had a failed Samsung SSD in my life. I trust them, I depend on them, I store all my work on them. All my computers, and I have a lot of them, all use Samsung SSDs. My new computer will have a Samsung SSD, and this is the one. I also have a USB-C reader because, as you can see, my old computer here has a floppy drive slot, which I have a USB SD card reader. I can plug in my SD card and read them off cameras and whatnot. Newsflash, today's computer cases do not come with floppy drive slots. Shocker! So I have this external USB reader that I'm going to somehow finagle in there so that I can still read my SD cards. When you have a processor that is fast like this, they generate a ton of heat, and you have to get rid of that heat. Typically, that means you have to use a fluid or water cooling system. It has a cooling block that sits on top of the processor, and it pumps fluid, usually water, around there that takes the heat away into a remote radiator mounted elsewhere in the case, and it has fans that blow through that radiator to get rid of the heat. I'm not a huge fan of the idea of putting fluid, especially water, inside a computer, and pumps involve moving parts that fail. The less moving parts inside your computer, the better. Fans, yes, fans fail, but fans you can replace fairly easily. A pump, especially a pump that fails and leaks all over your expensive processor, I don't like the idea of that. So instead, I have this Ice Giant Pro Siphon Elite air-to-air cooler. And how this works is with a phase change fluid that is under pressure, and it has a thermal transfer foot that sits on top of the processor. It gets heated up by the processor, and the fluid inside there boils, and in doing so absorbs heat. Because a substance such as a fluid that changes phase from fluid to gas, you have to add heat for that to happen, so it absorbs heat, and then it goes up into these radiating sections where the fans blow through, which takes the heat away, and that vapor then condenses back into fluid and drains back down to the foot, and the cycle repeats itself, and there are no moving parts other than the fans. This has got really good reviews, especially for this processor, so I have high hopes for it. I do have a MSI 1000-watt power supply, ridiculous, huge thing, but again, gets good reviews. And over there, too big to fit on my table here, I have a case. So we're gonna take all these parts, open them up, assemble it into a working computer with any luck, and then install. I guess I'm gonna go to Windows 11. I've been on Windows 10 for a long time. So we'll do a Windows 11 install and then start the week-long laborious process of transferring all of my software costs. I'm really not looking forward to that, especially seeing as I have a bunch of deadlines for work that has to get done right now. So I'm going to be working on the old computer and the new computer at the same time. We'll see how that goes. Well, I did order a large case because I wanted to make sure I had sufficient room for everything. And wow, did I get what I wanted. This thing is a monster. Look at the size of this. At least I do have the room for it. I've got the space, so it's not a problem, but wow, this is bigger than I thought it would be, but I'm happy to have it because more room is better than not enough. It does have these stupid windows because I guess people want to put fancy RGB lights and things inside. I could not care less about that. There will be no flashy RGB LED lights inside this computer. If you've seen any of my synthesizer restore videos, you'll know that whenever I remove screws, I always put them in a bag. Usually I'll label it, but I mean, I'm pretty apparent what that's for. Just because you never know where it's going to go and when you're going to need it, and then you won't remember what it's from, and you don't lose them that way. And I suppose we should probably take off both sides while we're at it. Okay, so there's the back cover taken off. This thing has a massive fan. I mean, it's what, a 6-inch fan in the front that blows in across your hard drives. Hard drives don't like heat, so that was something I was looking for, was to be able to have a heat extraction for or a fan for the hard drives. Also, it has a spot for an optical drive because I'm old school and still use optical drives. I still burn discs, and so I need that. You can install SSDs here. I notice they only have one tray for an SSD. I have more than one SSD, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I guess I'll have to get another one of these trays that fits in there. But I like that it's got this rubber shock mount on there. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is install the power supply. Well, actually, let's have a look at this box. It's got a user manual for the case. That's interesting. Tells you how to do everything. And then inside we got zip ties, all kinds of screws and different size things. And what have we here? Some piece of metal for something or other. I guess I'll have to read through the manual to figure out how this case works and so that I can get the power supply installed. You know what? Let's do a time lapse. This case has a new paradigm compared to my old case where all the cables go on the backside away from the board, so you're not cluttering the insides of the motherboard area with cables that impede airflow, because you need airflow for cooling. So here I am installing the power supply and then routing the cables from the power supply around the back. All right, so now I'm getting the main motherboard out. The first thing I have to do is remove the hold downs on that motherboard for the default cooler to replace them with the ones that I'm going to be using. There is the new one. Now I have to put the new processor in, so there goes the new processor. I'm going to put it down in there. I'm going to put the M2 drive, which is the main hard drive. That's a 4 terabyte M2 drive. Now I install the cooling bracket that holds down the new cooler and put the motherboard into the case. Once we've got all the multiple screws holding the motherboard in place installed, next thing we're going to do is run some cables. And you see I'm running them around the back and through the cutouts that go up to the front to get the motherboard powered from the power supply, which is down there at the bottom. They do have some nice cable management loops and straps and things, and try to keep it reasonably neat on the back side of the case. However, this does take a long time. Okay, so now I've got those cables out and I'm going to plug them all into the power supply. You can see at the bottom. And once I do have all those cables installed, I can then pull them through where they're going to go and put in the cover. And that cover helps the power supply draw air through so it keeps itself cool. Now I've got all the power leads out that go to the hard drives, and I'm going to plug in all the various cables that go into the motherboard. Once again, more cables being pulled. Next, the memory goes in, and you can see I actually put the memory into the wrong slot.
Day 2.
Now you can see the memory's in the correct slots, and I am going to put in the new fans that I just got into the top of the case. They didn't arrive with all the other stuff, so I had to wait for them to arrive to put them in. So I've got those new case fans going into the top, and I'm putting some foil tape on there to cover up holes. We'll talk about that in just a minute. And I sliced my finger up when doing that. Here's a USB header, so I can plug in USB devices on the back, and that just goes into the USB header on the motherboard. Now I'm putting some thermal compound on the CPU, and there goes the cooler. Install the cooler, and now that the cooler is installed, I can wire up its fans. And then it comes with another set of fans that you have to put on after the fact, because once you put it in there, those fans are on, you can no longer remove the cooler. So you have to actually screw it down and then install those fans on the back, because they block access to those screws that hold the cooler in place. Now that the cooler's in there, I got to pull all the wires through and hook up all the wires onto the motherboard so that the fans are actually going to be powered. All right. It's put together. I got these fans up here. I did put some aluminum tape up here just to baffle these fans to prevent it from just recirculating the same air around and around. The Antec or Ice Giant cooler is in here. So it has fans that suck upwards through the radiator, and then another set of fans that blow up here to these fans, which then suck the hot air out. There's a giant fan at the very front there. You can kind of see it. I have the cover off so you can see it. And let's see, M2 drive is installed there. RAM is all installed. CPU, cooler, everything looks good. I don't have any of the hard drives installed yet. Obviously the graphics card's not in there because it's still in my old computer, but everything else looks good. So let's switch it on and see what happens. Now, I will tell you that I have had it plugged in the entire time I've been building it, because even though it's turned off, the ground is still connected. And what that means is the chassis of the PC is grounded, which means as long as you're touching it, you are not going to build up static and then zap your expensive new motherboard. All right, so let's apply power, turn it on, and see what happens. Okay, I saw the light flick, so it did power up the power supply capacitors. So let's hit the power switch. Oh, it lit up. I hear fans spinning. That's a good sign. Lights are on. It's checking the DRAM. So apparently this does need some time when you first turn it on to check the RAM speeds. It does show status of that. The fact that it's actually got that far is good, so I'm going to take this and plug it into a monitor over there so I can watch and see what happens. And success! It's booted up, so now the hours and hours of setup begins. Interesting, it shows all the different fan speeds there. So what happened here that I didn't bother videoing is 3.5 days, full days of installing Windows, configuring Windows, installing software, configuring software, copying configurations across from the old computer till I got to the point where I could actually use the new computer. I had my email on it and you know, the critical stuff. So now I've got to that point, I can move all the hard drives and other hardware from my old computer onto the new computer so that then I can continue configuring and setting everything else up. So now we're back to a time lapse. I'm taking all the hard drives out of my old computer that contain all of my video and audio data. I mean, there's 16 terabyte drives here that I'm working with, and I'm putting them into the new computer. So those spinning metal drives are the huge ones that store lots of stuff, backups and things, and then I've got SSDs for other things. So I've got those installed, gonna close it up. And I do have one more USB card to put in there because it's a DAW computer. It needs lots of USB for all these different synths in here. And I forgot to plug in that one, so let's open that up, plug it in. All right, we are just about done. I have put together this computer and got the main M2 drive formatted. I got Windows 11 installed, and this computer has run for about 3 days now. And over those 3 days, I've spent a lot of time installing software, copying configurations, copying data over from the old DAW computer. I have not done any of the audio software yet. I didn't want to start doing that until I had all the hardware connected up to it, because obviously it's not going to work well if it doesn't have any hardware to talk to, such as mixers and synths and such. I've now done that. I've moved the graphics card across from the other computer, and I've moved all the hard drives in. You can see there's a couple hard drives down in there. So all the hard drives and SSDs from the old DAW computer that have all my data on them has been moved into this computer. I've got all the USB ports that I should need, because we've got a bunch over here, and then I've got a crap load over here. I need a lot of USB ports for this studio. It takes a lot to get everything running. And we should be ready to go, I think. I'm going to plug it in, and I think I'm going to tempt fate, put the cover on it, put it back, plug it all in, and see what happens. I really looked hard for a computer that didn't have these stupid windows on there, but they're hard to find because everybody wants flashy gaming PCs with lots of flashing lights inside, and I don't have any flashing lights, so there's nothing really to see, so the window's kind of pointless. All right, that's it. Buttoned up. Let's go plug it in and see what happens. So what happened was it worked. I plugged it in and it saw the network. It saw all my new drives. It did not see all the synthesizers. I had a lot of work to do to get it to be configured because I had to configure the RTP MIDI from my Mio XL MIDI router. I couldn't transfer across the configuration, so I had to do it from scratch on the new computer. So I do have the old computer still connected and running so that I can reference it and reference the configurations. And so I had to do that. I had to deauthorize all my plugin licenses on the old computer, install all those plugins, and there were freaking hundreds of them. I have way too many plugins. So I had to install all those one by one and then authorize the licenses on each of those, install Cubase, get it configured, talking to all the different synths. Some of the synths weren't routing correctly. So literally days of work. And I'm not done. I'm nowhere near done, but it's working. I have my video editing obviously on here. Cubase is working. I used Cubase today. I used it to work with some of the synths, and it worked correctly. So that's great. This has been, I think now 8 days, and I think I worked it out that I've spent about 70 hours in 8 days on top of a full-time job. So I've done this nights. So as you can see now, it's 12:30 a.m. This is pretty typical. It's pretty much 1 to 2 a.m. every night the last week to get this thing built. This is why I don't buy PCs all the time and why it's been 10 years since I did the last one. So I figure probably 3 or 4 more days of work and this PC will be good to go and do everything that the old one did and then some, and it will be much faster.
Tomorrow.
All right, final test. I've got every synthesizer turned on. I've got a project set up in Cubase where I'm sending a simple 1-bar loop out over MIDI to every synthesizer, and I'm going to set up every channel so that it's recording every synthesizer at the same time, including this microphone. And actually, I've got that other microphone turned on, or do I have it plugged in? No, I don't. So I got one channel I'm not recording, but every other channel, so I think it's 28, 29 channels I'm going to be recording simultaneously, and we'll see if it does it with any dropouts on this new PC. You know what, we'll record the vocal mic even though it's got no signal. Why not? The only one that's not going to produce any sound is the OP6, because for some reason my USB connection on the OP6 has failed and it's no longer communicating with the DAW PC or anything. So I am going to, I guess, go over and play that one by hand. All right, so I've got 16 bars of this nonsense. It's absolutely terrible to listen to because I just took a bunch of stuff in C minor and a lot of the synths are playing the same thing. Some things are playing different things, but they're all, I mean, it's all gonna be in the same key, so it won't sound horrendous, but it's gonna be really loud and awful to listen to. All right, as you can see, here's my 16 bars of awfulness being sent to all the different synths. And here's my audio recording section here. Let me just drag this down so we can see it actually coming in here. And let's hit record and see what happens. Well, that appears to work just fine. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to set up a screen recorder just to see if it will record. Let's see, here's a screen capture for full screen. Yeah, we'll turn the settings so we have system audio on but no voice. And let's record this. So now the screen recorder typically uses a lot of CPU. So let's blow away. Let's see, did I get OP6 on there? I did. Okay, so let's blow away the audio that I just recorded. Let me just do that. And let's try that again, see what happens with the screen recorder going. that and stop the screen recorder. Yeah, it works. Look at that. I'm thrilled with that. So no more audio dropouts, no more problems. And you know what? Let's do one more experiment. All right, I've made one more change, and that is that I have 2 montage soft synths running, and I've also got the performance meter showing up here somewhere. Where was that? There we go. So let's try and do this again. We'll set, let's get rid of the solo. We'll set up all these to record. We'll make sure we're actually recording the screen at the same time, just to add more load. And where is my performance meter? There it is. Okay, let's see what happens. Wow. So ASIO guard hardly budged. It didn't miss a beat there. And I'll stop the recording. That was pretty impressive. You can see all my channels recorded just fine. My op6 I had turned up a bit loud. I was playing it by hand, but so be it. But as you can see, everything recorded just fine. So if we mute all of the MIDI instruments, and so that all we're going to hear is the audio, we should hear that the exact same thing playing. Yep, there it is. So I recorded 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 12 stereo channels, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mono channels. So that's 24, so that's 30 channels of audio I just recorded there simultaneously while running 2 instances of the Montage M plugin, each with 3 or 4 parts in it, both FMX, AWM2, and ANX, at the same time as capturing audio and video on 4K, and it didn't even blip the ASIO meter. This computer is amazing. So unless you couldn't tell, I am mighty pleased with the results of this new computer. It absolutely blows away the performance of my old computer that was really struggling with multi-channel capture and sometimes even single-channel capture, especially if there was anything else in the computer running. This computer is not even breathing hard doing this stuff, and it's just effortless. So I'm hoping this tides me over for at least another 10 years like the last one did. I will put a link to all the different components I bought to build this computer in the description below of this video. If you have any questions, comments, anything at all, please leave them in the comment section below. And if you have 10 seconds, would you mind just clicking like and subscribe to the channel? It really helps me out when you do that. That's it for this video. Back to work. Thanks for watching. One quick postscript to this video. My old computer would have taken about 20 to 25 minutes to render this 28-minute video to be able to get it in a format that I could send to YouTube, depending on how much effects and how many tracks and things I had in it. The more complex the video, the longer it takes to render. The things like the time-lapse really take it a long time to do. This computer renders this video in 2 minutes and 27 seconds. So yes, this is going to be a huge time saver for me. No more hour-long video renders for me. Thanks, we'll see you soon.